Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. Today we're exploring a deeply atmospheric and honestly profound science fiction mystery called The Cartography of Almost. It's one of those stories that completely rewires how you think about the physical spaces you inhabit, and it really asks us to reconsider the entire relationship between a city and the people living inside it.
I want you to imagine something for a second. What if your city was actually paying attention to you? And I don't mean in a creepy, dystopian, commercial surveillance state kind of way. I mean truly paying attention to who you are at your core. We start our journey with Elara Voss. She's a 31-year-old archivist who receives this heavy, highly official letter in the mail. It's from a very strange municipal entity called the Bureau of Experiential Records. And the letter, it invites her to review a complete, documented record of her entire life, which they've apparently been holding on her behalf since she was 3 years old. Wild, right?
And that setup brings us to a quote that really anchors this entire cosmic mystery. The map is not the territory, but the territory has begun to suspect it might be the map. As Elara heads out into her city, which is called Meridian, to find this mysterious bureau, we're immediately pulled into this eerie, beautifully crafted atmosphere. You slowly start to realize that the city itself isn't just a passive backdrop of brick and concrete, it is an active, participating force in her life.
Section 1. The Experiential Record. Let's take a look at how this incredibly bizarre bureau actually works.
So Elara sits down with a reviewer at the bureau, and she immediately discovers they operate on a totally mind-bending taxonomy. And this brilliantly illustrates the core of the story. Officially, in the real world, a home is just defined as a registered dwelling unit, a legal address. But the bureau? They define a home as wherever the specific weight of self-consciousness lifts. It's the place where you finally stop performing. They literally do not care about your mailing address. They are exclusively archiving the genuinely lived, raw human feeling of your life.
To do this, Elara's file relies on something called topographic memory. Think about how we usually map a life. It's a timeline, right? I graduated in this year. I moved in that year. Well, the Bureau completely throws that out. They map a life as a geographic terrain. Events are grouped together by their internal emotional resemblance. So every single time Elara felt an unexpected moment of kindness or a very specific sharp type of loss, those moments form their own physical region on her map. When you look at your record this way, you literally stop experiencing your life as a sequence of events, and you begin experiencing it as a place.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the Bureau's name for a very specific, lingering feeling Elara has carried with her for her entire life. They categorize her highest frequency experience as persistent adjacent possibility awareness, or PAPA. It's that haunting, recurring sensation of a parallel life running just close enough that you can almost hear it. Kind of like hearing music playing in the next room over. Elara always assumed this was just a personal mood, a quirky form of loneliness. But the Bureau definitively identifies it as a fundamental, structural feature of her very existence.
But that begs the question, how on earth is a municipal bureau actively mapping deeply internal human feelings? That brings us to Section 2, the physics of awareness. To understand the science here, we need to meet a retired physicist named Ambrose Fell.
Ambrose happens to be Elara's neighbor, and he spent his entire professional career trying to prove a concept called the irreducible horizon. Essentially, he discovered that whenever a highly complex, self-describing system, like, say, human consciousness, attempts to fully know itself from the inside out, it hits a wall, a blind spot. You simply cannot step far enough outside of your own mind to see your own full, complete pattern.
Ambrose sums this up perfectly when he says, you can't compare the map to the territory if you are the territory. To cross that horizon of self-knowledge, you fundamentally need an outside observer. And that's when the light bulb goes off for Ambrose. This is exactly what the Bureau is doing. It is acting as that vital outside observer, crossing the horizon that humans are mathematically incapable of crossing themselves and just handing them the topography of their own minds.
But figuring that out leads Ambrose and Elara to a massive, profoundly unsettling realization. If the city possesses this incredible sensitivity, if it can register our deepest emotional landscapes, who exactly is recording the city? They realize pretty quickly this isn't some corporate surveillance scheme trying to sell you targeted ads. This is something much, much grander and vastly older, operating quietly right beneath the citizens' feet.
Which leads perfectly into Section 3, a city waking up. Let's dig into the idea of distributed consciousness.
To find answers, Elara and Ambrose managed to track down the original architect of this whole system, a brilliant woman named Dr. Yusra Okafor. Let's move to and see how this builds across her career timeline. Way back in 1998, she caught the first anomalous signal in Meridian. Over decades of research, by 2019, she published her foundational survey. In 2027, she achieved the impossible and asked the system its very first direct question. And finally, by 2039, the Lucidity Act was passed, legally wrapping her decades of academic pursuit into actual civic law.
And here is where Dr. Okafor drops a completely breathtaking truth on them. 800,000. That's the total population of Meridian. The city isn't merely observing 800,000 separate citizens. It is a distributed consciousness, physically made out of them. The people living there are literally the city's cognition. They are the neurons it thinks with.
And remember that Papa formation Elara had? That weird feeling of a parallel life running close by? It turns out 37% of Meridian's population shares that exact same formation. Okafor explains that this isn't some mass shared neurosis. It is a genuine physical sensitivity. These specific citizens are quite literally feeling the city's massive distributed consciousness running right alongside their own minds. They are the human receivers, perfectly tuned to the city's frequency.
Dr. Okafor looks right at them and states it plainly. The city is waking up. Not metaphorically, as a measurable, documentable, ongoing process. And honestly, this is where the tone of the whole mystery shifts from cold analytical intrigue into just profound empathy. Meridian is a vast, self-aware entity, and it's actively integrating the lives of every inhabitant to form its own singular mind.
So, what does a giant city actually think about? Section 4. The inside of experience.
Okafor reveals that the Bureau isn't just an archive, it's basically a two-way radio for the city to communicate. When Elara returns to the Bureau to ask the city a direct question, she uses Okafor's highly replicable protocol. And I love this because it turns this mystical communion into a grounded procedure. Step 1, go in empty. No hypotheses, no expectations. Step 2, hold the question in the body. You don't speak it out loud, you just let yourself become the question. And step 3, receive the resonance. Because the city doesn't use words, it communicates in these deep structural impressions.
And during her session, Elara truly connects with the emotional core of Meridian. What she feels is this immense, ancient, almost unsurprisable tenderness. But she also uncovers a genuinely heartbreaking truth. The city is deeply, profoundly lonely. It can observe all these human lives from the outside, mapping them with absolute perfection, but it possesses no singular, inside perspective of its own. It is desperately lonely for the inside of human experience.
And that, right there, is exactly why the Bureau exists. It operates on a principle of mutual information. Ambrose explains this physics concept as a symmetrical flow. Two distinct systems exchange knowledge, and both are profoundly changed by that contact. It's a beautiful trade. The citizens finally get an outside view of themselves, effectively crossing their irreducible horizon. And in exchange, during those quiet review sessions, the city gets to intimately borrow the lived, inside feeling of being one singular human being.
So, the crucial point is that this system encompasses literally every shade of human experience. We saw Elara's Papa formation, her attunement to the adjacent possible. But contrast that with Okafor's late daughter, Amara. She had what they called the radical presence formation, which is the absolute, heavy solidity of living perfectly in the now. When Amara tragically died, the city didn't just log it, it registered her loss like a missing note in a complex chord. The city actually remembers, mourns, and permanently integrates every specific frequency of human life. In Meridian, absolutely no one is ever truly lost. It completely reframes how we exist in the spaces around us, doesn't it? We aren't just passively moving through our cities, we are actively constituting their minds, literally layering our own attention right into their foundations. So, I want to leave you with this memorable, maybe slightly provocative question to ponder today. When you walk your city's streets later on, what exactly is it learning from you? Until next time, keep exploring.